Okay, this video is going to be on making a geometric pattern utilizing Illustrator. And why Illustrator? Because Illustrator is really built to easily make geometric patterns, right? But it's not limited to. We can use it to make any type of pattern, just like in Photoshop we can use it to make any type of pattern, right? But I'm giving you a couple different skills for your toolbox. So if you open up the geometric-pattern.ai file from icon download for pattern exercise, you'll see that I've made this little crazy looking geometric shape, and I specifically made this hexagonal shape to show you the power Illustrator has in its pattern maker tool. But before we do that, I'm actually going to show you a little bit about creating a rhythm with Illustrator using something called the blend tool, right? So if you hit the W key, you'll see where this is, the blend tool over here. And the blend tool can help us make a rhythm or a repetition. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually drag out a rectangle, square, right? I've got this rectangle, and I'm going to then make a circle on the other side. Actually, no. Let's leave this as a rectangle. I don't like that color at all. It's hurting my eyes. We'll go to green. Okay, so I have this green color here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one out here. And it's like, well, I could, right, I just hit Option. Now I could gently drag these out, right, and grab them and use, right, the alignment tools to put them, distribute them evenly, right? There it is, right there, right? That's one way. What if I don't want to do it that way? I could use the blend tool, right? So I'm going to select both of these objects, and I'm going to go to this blend tool, and this has blend options. So what I did is I double-clicked on this tool, and I want steps in between. There's other things, but we want specified steps, and I want 3 steps in between. So hit OK. Actually, we never had to really actually select these both. What we do is we click on the first one, and we click on the second one, and you see what happened there, right? I've got this weird blend object. And now these individual things you can't actually grab and do anything with, the ones that it created, until you maybe go to Object Expand, right? And I would expand the fills or whatever. Oops, nope, I guess I wanted to fill let's do expand. Yes, just expand both when in doubt, right? And so now it's made a group, and I can hit ungroup, Command Shift G, right? And I can actually grab these, right? That's something I could do. Let's go back here. I can actually manipulate this path it's on, so I'm actually grab the pen tool to add something, right? And there, right? I can actually kind of live update this blend to see how I want the directionality of my rhythm, right? So that's something we can do. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Oops, I just deleted it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start over. Right, so now I'm going to draw out another rectangle, and this time I will draw a circle. Why not? Circle and rectangle. Right? I'm actually going to make it tinier. Right? And now maybe I want to use the blend tool again. So I'm going to go to the blend tool. I'm going to click on one, and I have 3 steps if you remember selected, right? But if I need to change that, I can go double click on that into the options. Click on the first one, click on the last one. Now you see, right, I've got this actual morphing rhythm, right? I morph from a square, I get into a circle, right? Now this isn't perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Really complex shapes don't morph very well, but this is something you might be able to play with. And again, I don't like the distances between these. I can go up to Object Expand, right? I can go to Object Ungroup, right? And then I can go ahead and move these things however my little heart desires to make a progressive rhythm, right? So that's a cool tool that we could potentially utilize, right? But now we're going to talk about making a pattern, right? So that's a little bit about making a rhythm with Adobe Illustrator, and right, we can make any type of pattern we want with Adobe Illustrator, right? If we wanted to have something of a more organic type pattern, right, I can build this out and go into a pattern maker, but I'm going to show you how to do it with this just so we can see more options, right? So I've created this hexagon. So I'm going to go ahead and select this hexagon, and I am going to go to, boy, I should have remembered this in the first place, huh? This is a pattern. Object, pattern, make. Okay, so I'll hit the pattern, and this is going to bring me into this pattern maker thing. And what it's going to do is it's going to add a swatch pattern. You don't need to know that. Well, I mean, you do need to know that in a second, but for right this very second, you don't need to know that, right? So I've got this new pattern. You see, this is the way it would make the pattern. It would have these white, right, because it's going on this grid pattern. So if you look at these pattern options, this is where we have a lot of different ways we can make this cap thing, right? Like how many copies do we want? You know, with 5 by 5 is fine, right? It's just a regular repetition, but we don't have to just have it go this way, right, and have this white space. I purposely drew a hexagon to show you that there's more than just a grid pattern, right? And you may choose to just use a grid pattern in your own geometric shapes, but I'm going to go ahead and look at these things, right? Brick by row, so I'm seeing what happens there. Let's do grid by column, right? And it's going to depend on what your shape is, right? And you've selected your shape. I'm going to go to hex by column. So far, I still don't like this. Hex by row. Look at that, a perfect pattern there, right? So I like that, and I can go ahead and keep that. And how do I keep that? I would just say done, right? And it actually gets updated right here. It's in my patterns thing, right? And so how do we use patterns in Illustrator? Well, I'm going to draw us a big rectangle, and then I just go ahead and fill it. I select that pattern to fill it, right? And so how would I use this in Photoshop? Well, if I have a letter-sized document and I want to fill it with that pattern, right, I can always just make a square, right, and make sure that it's letter size, right? So I can say, right, 8.5 inches by 11 inches, right? And it's vector, so it really doesn't matter how many pixels it is because it will scale, right? And I can go ahead and copy that and paste it into Photoshop. I can save it as its own document. I mean, there's a million ways to do this, right? But if I double click on the pattern here, right, I can actually change up that pattern. And so the way it works is that it has really, the one in the center is going to be your actual artwork, whereas the rest are these generated ones. So you see I can actually, when this object isn't ungrouped, I can go in and play with these. So if I wanted to, right, I could at this point live play with what's going on here and like change my whole pattern, right? I can play with that, right? And watch how the pattern expresses itself, right? I can zoom out and zoom in, and when I'm happy with that now, obviously I'm overwriting this pattern now by doing it this way. I guess we could have made a copy first so we had that version, and we can make a new version, right? But right, I've made this neat way here. I hit done, and then you'll see, of course, it updated in my document what it is. Now you see that over here, it doesn't actually have that white built in, right? That white is part of the canvas. It's not in there. But if you put this in Photoshop, those would be transparent pixels, and you'd see whatever your canvas size is, right? But that is really it. That's the very simple and quick way to create a pattern in Illustrator. So I'll just show you real quick, right? I'm just going to click it, copy. I'm going to jump back into Photoshop. I'll say, whoops, I still have the last thing from the last video up, right? But I'll say new letter size. Make sure it's this way because that's how I had it. And I'm just going to paste. I'm going to paste it as, I'm actually don't want it as pixels because then it'll rasterize it. I'm going to paste it as a smart object. So that way it's still vector and I can change its size anywhere I want, right? And then I can say, it's got to wait, it's got to wrap up here. It's taking a little time. Everything's not Instamagic. And again, I can say saved. I know this reminds me of like 80s patterns right here. Right, which is a style called Memphis style, and I don't even know if I'm too old and no one gets this reference. By the Bell, right? That was an 80s show that was on, right? Like obviously I would change the color and stuff, right? But I made this pattern, right? And still, even with this, right, we could always right, play with its opacity. If it's a little too much, right? If for reading the text. Now for the gift wrap exercise, right, this would be fine. But if we needed to use it in a different capacity, right, we can play with it with blending modes, everything that we can do with a normal layer. And that is pattern making and how to make a quick and easy geometric pattern using Illustrator.